Welcome to Ask Pastor Craig. And today's question is a bit of a doozy. Given some of the most recent news, how should Christians consider the death penalty? Well, the death penalty has been back in the news because Missouri just put to death a inmate who had been filing for appeals, and there was a lot of details around the case. And actually, in this video, I don't want to get into that case. You're free to look it up. I would rather spend our time talking about how committed Christians should think about the death penalty. Now, I want to first begin by saying there are going to be many committed Christians who will disagree with charitability on this topic. It's admittedly a shade of gray, but I want to at least present some things that every Christian should think through when considering the death penalty. Now, I have found that when I speak on the issues of life, when I speak on being pro-life, if I'm talking about children in the womb, conservatives love when I talk about being pro-life. However, I found that equally when I talk about the death penalty, liberals love when I talk about it, but conservatives don't like how I talk about it. For me, the issue comes down to being pro-life. And what that means for me is supporting life whenever possible from womb to natural tomb. Let me say that again. For me, my conviction as a pro-life Christian is that I ought to support life from womb to natural tomb. Therefore, I do not support the death penalty in any circumstance. Now, one might disagree and say, Craig, these are some of the worst people of our society. They have forfeited the right to their life for their crimes, which they have been found guilty for. And now it is the job of the state, which has been given the sword by God, to dispatch them from our society. That is typically the argument, and I can understand that. Again, this is where I said some Christians are going to disagree. Here is my biggest issue with the death penalty and where I'll try and convince you, and you can feel free to disagree and push back, and we could probably have a longer conversation, but as this is Ask Pastor Craig, I'm going to share what I think. We know, as a country, we have killed innocent people using the death penalty. We know stone cold fact that we have killed innocent people using the death penalty because their convictions, they were exonerated after their death using DNA evidence that proved that they did not do the crime. For example, murder or rape or some of these things. So we know that we've made mistakes. So let me just ask you the question if you are an ardent death penalty supporter, and I'm asking this genuinely, not as a gotcha. How many innocent lives are you willing to destroy to uphold this system? For me, the answer is none. Not one life. I'm not willing to destroy one innocent life made in the image of God, an image bearer of the King, in an effort to uphold a system that actually doesn't produce equitable outcomes. And what I mean by that, too, is we know that African American men are about 4 to 5 times more likely to receive the death penalty sentence for the same crimes committed as white men. So we know that there's inherent flaws in the system. Why? Because humans have inherent flaws. We are sinners. We are broken, and we bring biases and issues into a system. So if you wanted to argue with me, well, Craig, God has given the sword to the state, and it's their job to protect their citizens, and there are certain times where people have forfeited their right to life because of the crimes they've committed. And in a vacuum, in a perfect system, the state has the right to take their life. Not a person doing it, the state acting on behalf of the people. In a vacuum, I might be willing to say, okay, I can understand that. I would still not be comfortable with it, but in a vacuum. But this isn't in a vacuum. We know there are all sorts of issues with the death penalty. We know stone cold that we have killed innocent people in the name of justice. We have taken an innocent person who did not commit the crime, and we have injected them with chemicals that stop their heart. And that is horrific to me as a pro-life person. as horrific as it is to see children destroyed in the womb. That sentence makes someone on your political spectrum cringe. To me, it is a consistent ethic to say that I value life from womb to natural tomb. By the way, if the government starts coming around and saying, hey, we should kill seniors because they're a burden on our society, they're not producers anymore, they cost a lot medically, and we should start doing assisted suicide, I'm going to vocally say, no, that is evil too, because I'm pro-life. But when we think through capital punishment, often we just think of the worst of humans, and we consider the crimes they do, and they are at times horrific. Horrific. I understand that. But when we focus on the micro details, we can sometimes forget the macro, that we are all made in the image of God, and we are supporting a system that we know has killed innocent people. I looked it up for this video. Do you know in Ohio alone, 11 people were found guilty and put on death row and then exonerated after the fact? So we could have killed 11 innocent people. Their case got heard. And some of you would argue, well, see, that's the system working, Craig. And I would argue they were found guilty and just, an appeal away, the DNA evidence coming through away from being put away and killed for a crime they did not commit. That we would have destroyed innocent life made in the image of God. And that's just not acceptable to me. It's just not acceptable to me. And so again, Christians can disagree on these things, but I want to at least point to the other side. We know that the death penalty doesn't deter crime. We know that it is actually more expensive to put someone in death row than it is to just house them with life without parole. So it costs more. It doesn't deter crime. And we know that we've killed innocent people. For me, that's enough to say it's not a good system. And for my conservative friends in Mercer County, of which I am one, let me give you just one last little thing. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but I think it's actually true. But you can, it's not as serious. But you are often the party that says yes on the death penalty. But you are also often the party that says the government makes mistakes and is inept in everything. Should we give that same government that constantly makes mistakes and is inept in everything the power to take your life? I would argue that you're actually right, that the government is often inept and makes mistakes in everything, and they have done so in the most important of ways, and we have taken innocent life. And as a pro-life person, I cannot endorse that. So I want to give you at least that to consider. I recognize that some are going to disagree with this. Some that are my dear brothers and sisters and love Jesus Christ are going to see this differently, and I am very comfortable with that. I don't think this is an issue we need to break unity in the body for, but I at least want you to think through this issue and not support a system just tacitly and just say, yeah, I'm fine with the death penalty. They get what they deserve. Maybe some we could see that way. But there are others who have been destroyed, killed, that were completely innocent. One life. That's my line in the sand, and I know there's been more. You need to think through what yours is. And as we see these things come up, I think Christian voices are important. And to me, as I've discussed issues of abortion and people are frustrated with that, I've at least been able to say, hey, man, I'm consistent in this from womb to natural tomb. I don't support the death penalty. I don't support euthanasia. That from conception to the baby in the mother's belly, the womb to natural tomb, that I am for life. And there is nuance and gray all along the way. But as a general point of view, I think that is where we are called to be as Christians. So how should Christians view the death penalty? Well, you can find many, many Christians who support it, and they can list their reasons. But if you ask Pastor Craig, that's where I come down. Hope this helps.